Hello and welcome back to Stroup Mansion. Today I have a lot to go over. So I have my laptop ready here with some footage that I'm going to be showing you so that I can reference it myself and comment on it, because this is basically a project that we started the second we moved into the house. Literally same day that we got keys, we started working on the kitchen. Do not get too excited, as you can tell by the title and the thumbnail. This is not a full kitchen reveal, but this is a very huge part of the kitchen. The stairs. When you first walk into the house, they are right in your face. You see them. So it's important that they look good, and they're finally at a point where I'm obsessed with them. They look so good. When we first bought the house, the kitchen layout was a little bit different. There was a partial wall with a sheet for a door, and then right inside of that door was the stairs, and those stairs were actually tarped off. So I don't know, it was summertime, so it's not like it was super cold. I'm not really sure the reason for the tarping. Either way, that little section of the house was definitely ignored. The previous owner had bought the house while it was abandoned, so he had his work cut out for him. And what we now use as the laundry room, which is at the top of the stairs, and the bathroom that I just finished, those were both untouched from their abandoned state. Guessing that he just kind of concentrated on the areas of the house that were more needed, more important, and these side stairs here that were, blocked off from the kitchen weren't that important. But to me, they are very important because the kitchen layout is a little bit different. Like I said, you see them as soon as you walk in the house, and for a very, very long time, they were ugly. So I guess we'll start now with my journey with the stairs. What you are looking at right now is shortly before Easter of 2021. I ended up ripping up the rest of that flooring that was in the kitchen for Easter Day. I do remember that specifically because I felt like it made a really big impact on the house. Side note here, I have the subscriber thing on Instagram where you can subscribe for 99 cents, and I just share more things that are as I'm doing them, work in progress, and sometimes I'll just tell random things about the house. And I was just saying that I felt like it was such a big deal that I ripped up that flooring, and I was both Jeff and I were so proud of the house, even though it had so much left to do. Obviously, it was a complete and utter mess, but it was so much better than the kitchen that we bought, just us removing some things, that I was very excited. And now looking at it, I realize oh my gosh, how did anybody come visit us and not be like, what are you getting yourselves into? Yeah, so thank you for not saying anything like that, because what were we getting ourselves into? It's 3 years later and I'm still chugging away at this kitchen, but it's gonna be worth it. So moving on here, this was a big improvement once the room actually had drywall. That just felt so much nicer, so much cleaner, and a step in the right direction. So they sat like that for a very long time, and I didn't think anything of them. It was just kind of okay, that's a really big project that I'm saving for another day. I'm not dealing with it. It's just too much work, and it's not exciting work. It doesn't feel I guess I didn't realize the impact it would have on the whole view when you entered the house. So it just wasn't super important to me. Then one day I was like, I don't know what I should start working on. And Jeff was like, well, why don't you do the stairs? And I was kind of offended that he wanted me to work on them, because it was what do you mean? You don't like them? Obviously nobody likes them, but you think that's what I need to do next? And he was right, because I did need to do that next. I eventually decided that I wanted to paint them and not strip them completely and refinish them to bare wood. And that was partially because I knew that some of the stairs would need to be replaced. So even though I knew I was going to be painting them again, I think the best prep that you can do on something like this that has had 1 million layers of paint over the years is strip them, at least partially. So I really concentrated on the big chunks of paint that had built up in the corners of the stairs. Truly, those stairs got the landlord special. They were not pretty. I love stripping paint, especially using the heat gun, so that was kind of fun. Look at those big drips. Here's what they look like after I did the majority of the stripping on them and before we built the rest of the stairs. It was one of those things where it was a mess, but it was also a good mess because you could tell that I was actually working on it and it just felt good. It was ugly, but it looked better than globs of white paint and big drips of white paint. It was progress. So here are the stairs after we finished building them. I feel like they probably stayed in this condition for a little while as well, where it was just like, I'm not sure what to do next, so I'll just sit on it. That happens a lot around here. After rebuilding the few stairs that needed fixed because they were broken, the question then became, what the heck are we gonna do for these balusters, these spindles, just like the rail in general? How are we going to make this work? I briefly looked into new ones, which were insanely priced. I don't know how people afford to do anything, honestly. Like, I know that I'm somebody that is literally doing things that other people might say, oh, how do they afford that? But it's just because we try very hard to be thrifty, and this is one of those instances where I got to be thrifty as heck, and I'm extremely proud of it. But hold on one second, let me tell you that. So we also then looked into vintage or like reused balusters. I looked into a few places that sold like reclaimed things, and even there, the balusters were just bonkers priced. And like, I get that they need to be like salvaged and taken out and that is worth money because somebody did a job. But at the same time, to me as a consumer, if I have to do a boatload of work on it to get it back into nice shape, that's not really, it doesn't work for me. I think if I was super rich, then maybe yes, like buying reclaimed items at, you know, a nice price would be fine, but it does not work out for our budget to buy those. And plus we needed a boatload of them. I couldn't find them in more than like sets of like 12. And I think we ended up needing 16, 17, 18, something like that. We needed a lot more than I could find that matched. But I think my biggest qualm with it was the price and how much work I would need to put into those to make them nice. I have no problem like refinishing flat surfaces, but when it comes to something that is lumpy, bumpy, groovy, I mean, I don't want to strip that. I don't want to, you know, it just seems like a lot of work. So because I was not having any luck with that, I went back to what was my original idea, which at first, when I approached my dad with this idea, he was like, that's kooky, that's gonna take forever. No, we can't do that, like that, no. Then when I approached him again with the idea, he was like all in, which I don't know what made him flip-flop, but it ended up being really cool. My dad and I actually made the spindles for the stairs, and I'm like seriously so proud. I think it's really, really cool. I love the idea of adding this touch to our house, and like obviously I'm putting so much sweat and work and money and effort and love into the house, but I think adding like this like handmade detail that I got to make with my dad is like the ultimate cool. Once we decided this was the route that we wanted to go, there was then the issue of where do we get the wood? And my dad had the brilliant idea that we could go get wood from a family friend's farm, because that farm is also like a trucking company. And on the trucks with the loads, there's generally pieces of lumber that like kind of keep it in place or whatever. And all of that at this place just gets tossed in a pile outside of one of the barns. And he had told my dad that my dad was free to take any of that, you know, to play with on the lathe, because my dad is a big woodworking guy. So that is how I was able to source the wood for free. But don't be too jealous. It's not beautiful wood. We brought home tons of wood and we were only able to use a very small fraction of it because some of it was just split too bad, or it wasn't tall enough, or it was this, or it was that. There was a lot of cutting down pieces of wood that ended up not working, or just being like, oh, we can't actually run this through the lathe because it's gonna blow up. Here is my dad running it through the table saw so that we could get it down to pieces that we were able to put on the lathe. We cut them all down to the same exact size so that they would all be the same starting width. I really like this clip because I think it shows how gross the wood was and how kind of like unusable it looked, but that once we cut away some of the bad stuff, it ended up being perfect. We used the original balusters that were on the stairs, as kind of a rough template for the ones that we made. I went into this with the expectation that they would not all be the same. I was really hoping to give it like some handmade flair of like, oh, they're all a little bit different. And they definitely are all a little bit different, but they are based on the design that was in the house, which also I think those were handmade. I don't know if they were handmade by somebody who lived here at some point or if they were from like a company or something, but they were also all a little bit different. They were not machine made. So I like carrying that on. I think it's really fun to like kind of reuse a design in that sense. My dad made the first one, I okayed it, and then we both got to work. So 1 or 2 days a week for probably a month, I went over to my parents' house and worked on the lathe with my dad. He has a couple of them, so we were both able to work at the same time. And it was really fun. I wish that I had shot more footage of it. I wish that I had just taken like so much because it's just so cool. Like I love working on the house with my dad, and every single big project has been me and him working on it. But I feel like this is a very visible product of our work together, and it's really fun and satisfying, and like I love it. Oh, I love it so much. Here's a picture of the spindles up on the first side. We obviously had a lot of work to do still. I wanted to really like beef up the rail, make the trim fatter, make it more substantial. Some finished spindles. Here's my dad helping me get the other side up. A view through the spindles. And here's my favorite picture, my dad and I on the stairs after we got the rail and the spindles installed. I just think it's really special. And now it is time to prime. I am using the same primer and paint that I used on the floors downstairs. When we bought the house, the living room floor was painted black. I've talked about this briefly, that like it had like some sort of like stuff on top that like flaked away. Either way, it got me into the painted black floor. I thought it looked nice, and I understood that the floors probably weren't in a condition where they were able to be sanded down again. So I kind of just felt like, okay, let's do the rest of this in paint, and like, okay, they all match, they all look good. So that's what I'm doing for the stairs, is I'm using the same paint. So this paint has held up wonderfully. In my office, which is the first room that I painted the floor black in 3 years ago, back when we first bought the house, it only has a few like boo-boos on the floor, and those are actually where I tried to patch it with filler, and the filler came up. So the paint then was removed. But otherwise, like even though this room gets a lot of traffic, they still look awesome, they still look amazing. So I really, really, really love this paint and primer combo. Once again, because I love to draw out projects forever, the stairs just stayed primed for a while. But I just recently got them painted black, and they are so sexy. I'm very happy with the way it turned out. It was really satisfying. Like the black looked so good immediately, and it was like one of those impactful projects. Like, you know when you like repaint white, trim white to just like make it brighter and cleaner, like it's never actually a fun job. Or like sometimes like priming isn't really that fun. But painting these stairs black was such a visual impact that it was immediately just so satisfying. So for the spindles, I actually want to talk about this because I felt like on Instagram I saw so many like, here's a spindle hack, paint it with a sock with paint on it. And I thought about trying that, and then I just felt like that was going to be sloppy and not give me a very smooth finish. So what I did was I actually rolled these. I rolled as much as I could, and then I just went in and filled in with the paintbrush on my next coat, and then rolled it again. I think one of the most important things I've learned when it comes to like paint and drywall mud and stuff like that and filling holes is that you don't have to do it on the first coat. I know that like people love to try to be like super efficient and like get things done in one swoop, but I find it easiest to sometimes just be like, okay, that's good enough for a first coat. So this first coat of black paint, it wasn't a very thorough coat. It was just me rolling as much as I could and then coming back with a brush on the second coat to fill in all of those gaps. The stairs ended up needing like 3 or 4 coats, not the stairs themselves. And it's not because the paint wasn't opaque, it was because I just kept finding more pieces of stairs that weren't painted. I made Jeff come in and like look at the stairs really well, like while I had the paintbrush out, and was like, do you see anything? And then like 2 weeks later, I'm just walking down the stairs randomly, and there was a huge, like this tall piece on the back of one of the spindles that was just gray. It was just primer. I totally missed it. So anyway, I guess I just wanted to say that I think that you should have patience when you paint, and I don't think that you need a painting hack that involves a sock. that I think the best, nicest finish can come from just being patient. Like I said, I did a few coats of the paint on the stairs. I did like an extra coat on the couple stairs that I felt like would get the most traffic. Obviously, I know that like every stair gets the same amount of traffic unless for some reason somebody turns around. But I do think that you put the most like oomph on the bottom few steps. So those got a couple coats extra. And then, like I said, I took my time painting those spindles. This next part is not specifically stair related, but it is in the stairwell, and I think it makes such a big impact. I hung wallpaper, which I'm very excited about. I've been thinking that I wanted wallpaper here since like the beginning. Like as soon as I saw that like weird little corner that I didn't feel like was upstairs or downstairs, I thought that needs like something funky, something fun. I've had my eye on this wallpaper for a while. It's from Rebel Walls, I think. I will link that below. They had a sale, and I took that as my like, okay, do it. I found that their wallpaper was stupid easy to hang. It's a little bit more papery than my previous experiences with wallpaper. It didn't have any stretch to it. It was kind of like, the first thing that comes to my brain is like something that you would wrap a school textbook in, kind of like brown paper bag, but a little bit more luxurious, but not too much more. It didn't have any stretch. And that had been my previous experience with wallpaper, was that like when you like are squeegeeing it, that it kind of like stretches just a tiny bit. And this just went up in sheets. I don't know. It was so easy. Jeff was like, oh, like how long do you think that'll take you? And I was like, I don't know, like a couple hours. I know it's a super small area, but like I wanted to be precise and like, you know, do the best job possible. And it ended up taking me like no time at all, like obviously less than an hour. Like it was nothing. That was so easy to hang. Definitely a really good wallpaper brand, I guess, for beginners if you're not feeling confident with something that might give you a little bit of stretch. That was so easy to hang up. Anybody could do it. So let me show you what it looks like right now. You will have to forgive me because my kitchen is not clean. I'm working on another project that you will obviously be able to see in this footage. And I can't carry that out of the way, and I just kind of want to make this video because I'm excited about it, so ignore that, don't look at it. So going forward, some things I want to do for the stairs. So I'd like to add a runner. I do not have that planned out yet. I also need to add a rail for the remainder of the stairs that the current rail does not like go up to the door. I don't know if that sentence makes sense. It doesn't matter. It's something that probably won't be done for a little while because the drywall actually ends where the floor is at the stairs. This is like so hard to explain. I'm just gonna show you. As you can see, the drywall ends here. This hasn't been drywalled yet because I want to do the whole laundry room, you know, in like one go. But I think that the rail should come up further than the current drywall. So that'll be something to do at a later date. I also want to beef up the trim that is at the two posts at the bottom of the stairs. That was in my original plan, but it was just kind of one of those things where I was like, oh, I'll like figure it out once the stairs are at a point where I can see where they're at. I am a super visual person, so sometimes I have a hard time just like imagining what something could look like complete, so I have to get it to another step before I can imagine the next step. So now that it's at this point and I can see what the stairs look like, what the post looks like, I can now play with some further trim ideas to just kind of make it fancier, beefier, prettier. So I think that is all. I'm sure there's probably something that I totally forgot to say or some clip I totally forgot to include that was really important to the storytelling, but basically I just wanted to show you that my dad and I made the balusters and that I'm very excited about that and very proud. But I figured that we needed to go over the whole story so that you could really appreciate how far this has come. Because man, it's been a long time coming. Making home takes time, and I almost feel like it's almost more satisfying because it did take so long that, you know, I don't know, the end just feels even sweeter. I tell you, I am so glad to have that done. It is such a big impact when you walk in the house and see now this beautiful, sleek, black painted staircase instead of the white, chippy, chunky paint one that was there. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this little history of my stairs. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you love them, and I hope you also think it's really cool that I made those spindles with my dad. Because I just love it. Seriously, I wish I could put like a little like sign below them or on them that says like, we made these. Hey, we made these. Just because I feel like you probably wouldn't necessarily like walk in and be like, oh yes, are those handmade? Unless you are, I don't know, like a woodworker or somebody like that knows that stuff. But otherwise, like, I don't know. How many people do you know that made their own spindles for their stairs?